Many Chinese people choose to hold their weddings during the 7-day holiday in early October. This year was no different. As September and October is the peak wedding season, our sales are higher than in previous months. However, some stuff is very different from previous years. Recently, the media in mainland China have been running an article titled, "These young people are having weddings but not spending an extra cent." It gained a lot of attention. For example, this one reposted on the social media platform Weibo has gained nearly 200,000 views. We will introduce its content later. Let's take a look at what happened to wedding companies in Shanghai. Yuan Jialiang operated a large-scale wedding planning business in Shanghai for nearly a decade before switching to wedding photography just before the outbreak of the epidemic. Why? In the process of switching from wedding planning to wedding photography, I started to realize that actual couples' demands for photography and videography will not change. No matter how the format of the wedding changes, no matter how the scales of the wedding change, they still have the demand to record this precious time. So I found that I've made the right career change. This demand is a lifetime memory for them, and I believe everyone will choose to document this. That is to say, Yuan noticed that the demand for a large wedding planning business of this kind in a metropolis like Shanghai was starting to fall, so he switched to wedding photography. The wedding industry in China struggled during the pandemic. Many couples postponed their weddings. In 2022, the number of marriages in China stood at 6.8 million, 800,000 fewer than in 2021. And the lowest level since 1986, when the government began publishing the figures. This represents a major challenge to the CCP authorities. The number of couples willing to tie the knot has plummeted.
I didn't think I would be speechless by the words of a 44-year-old unmarried man. He's a salesman. 2 days ago, I consulted with him about something, and then unexpectedly, the two of us talked about the topic of marriage. I asked him, I said, "You're getting to this age. Why aren't you married yet?" You know what he told me? He said that the older he gets, the less he wants to get married. Then I asked him why. He was silent for a while and then said something to me. I don't know if what he said was right or wrong. He said that the reason I don't want to get married is because I'm lazy. He said I don't want to carry those endless mortgage and car loan payments. I don't want to rack my brain to think about what kind of gift to buy for my wife, one holiday after another. He doesn't want to think about how to keep his wife happy when he comes home from work where he has worked hard to maintain the relationship with the colleagues and friends. He doesn't want to work hard on the one hand while worrying about his wife running off with someone else if he doesn't work hard enough. He doesn't want to come home from a day's work, tired as a dog and without a hot meal. He doesn't want to bear the brunt of the leader's anger outside and then come home to see his wife's attitude. He doesn't want to be filial to his parents, but also has to think about how to pass on the family name. He doesn't want to work hard to bring up children, but also has to try his best to buy a home for his children, to buy a car, and to save up for the wedding. He doesn't want to compare himself with other people after he has children, to see whose children wear the best clothes and are raised with the best things, and how many children are enrolled in the interest classes, tutoring classes, and so on. And even more so, he doesn't want to be sandwiched in the middle of his mother and wife to mediate between them. If one doesn't handle it well, one will suffer from both sides. Look, how comfortable it is to live alone. If I'm hungry, I eat. If I get sleepy, I sleep. When I wake up, I get together with my friends. If I'm unhappy, I stay in bed to play video games. I don't have a wife to watch over me. I don't have kids to chase after me. I spend more money when I have more money, and I spend less when I have less money.
To Ben Cavender, Managing Director and Head of Strategy at China Market Research Group, only a stronger economy could slow the downward trend in marriages.
And so you have a lot of younger consumers sort of just saying, well, maybe marriage isn't the right thing for me. So I think that that's one thing that's coming through loud and clear. I think the next thing is China's demographic issue with low birth rates. And I think the reality right now is a lot of younger adults in China feel that raising kids is just too expensive, and they don't think the government has done enough to make having children more affordable. And that's also, I think, having a bit of a drag on the marriage industry as well.
Young people nowadays do have a lot of pressure. The pressure is especially big. Indeed, the problem is the wages aren't in keeping with the cost of living. It's not like your time when you made less money, but stuff was cheaper. That's right, my kid is over 40 this year. Nowadays, young people don't get married, and you can't do anything about it. What? He's over 40? That isn't right. He doesn't get married and he doesn't date. He is wary of the whole thing. Whether he gets married or not is his issue now, and I'm not in too much of a hurry. If the traditional Chinese viewpoint is to pass on the family name, what if a girl were born? You wouldn't be able to pass on the family name anyway, right? In the past, one could only have one child. He refuses to date. Too much pressure. He has too much pressure. Now, if you manage to have a child from birth to their graduation from university, it'll cost around 1 million RMB. How are you going to do that? Of course, choosing to get married in China is still the mainstream of the society. Weddings in China have traditionally been complicated and expensive events. Wedding planners report that couples who throw a wedding nowadays are spending less money. Before the pandemic hit, weddings were a big business in China, with Dashui Consulting estimating the industry to be worth 3.6 trillion yuan, that is about 487 billion in 2020. Couples traditionally spend heavily on gold jewelry, elaborate decor, and luxury venues, but Frank Chung from Changfeng Wedding Planning in Shanghai says few weddings this year had a budget of over 100,000 yuan, which is US $13,736. The whole environment has contributed to the fact that the wedding industry is not very prosperous now. This is also the fact, including the decline in China's overall marriage rate, the change in the wedding, the change in their own concept. This will be a real big challenge for the next younger batch of wedding professionals in the future. I was probably hopeful for another big industry climax, but now I am more worried than optimistic about the prospects. With high jobless rates and low household spending among the young and the middle class, Jewel Wang, who owns several stores in China selling designer wedding dresses, is staking the future of her company on wealthier clients that have weathered the economic downturn.
COVID caused such a big impact on everybody's lives. As a market, we see an absolute downturn in spending. So all alongside, our strategy have been niche, 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 niche. We don't want to flow with the broader market because we don't think that's in a good place to go.
Jewel Wang operates a nationwide chain of bridal shops of high-end brands, including Vera Wang, Oscar de la Renta, and Carolina Herrera. In today's China, the vast majority of young people cannot afford them. A recent report in the Chinese media quoted a wedding professional as lamenting, "Many of my peers have switched to other professions, and in other words, the future of this industry is all about high-end customized weddings and bottom-priced assembly line weddings, and the good old days of ours have come to an end." Indeed, wedding companies enjoyed a period of huge profits over the past 2 decades. Because weddings are one of the most ceremonial celebrations and commemorations of life in a Chinese family, most people take considerable pains to make them happen. This has led to a phenomena such as wedding clustering at a certain time, often peak seasons being too evident for practitioners, and most weddings cost a fortune and are of varying standards. In a survey conducted by a Chinese financial media in October 3 years ago, 1/3 of the respondents said that they can't afford not to have a wedding as they have to let their friends and family know about it and that it needs to be ceremonial. About 20% said that it depends on the situation and that they will do it if they can afford it, but won't force it. How much does it usually cost to have a wedding in China? In 2019, a questionnaire survey was conducted by Convergence Media in China. It was mainly targeted at first-tier cities. The results showed that 47.39% of the respondents said that the wedding expenditure was more than 200,000 yuan, or more than US 28,000. It's equivalent to more than 3 times the per capita annual disposable income of the first-tier cities. Among them, 17.54% of the respondents said that the expenditure was between US 14,000 and 28,000, and 30.81% said that it was between 28,000 and 70,000. While those in favor of a completely bare-bones marriage, that is, a wedding ceremony that costs no money, were only 1.42%. The fact that the vast majority of Chinese families choose to have weddings is related to the country's long-standing custom of offering gifts and money. From the city to the countryside, relatives, friends, and colleagues are expected to offer a gift to anyone who hosts a wedding. For parents and other family members, the amount of gift money given over time can add up to a large sum, like a long-term investment in relationships. When one's own child gets married, the groom usually pays for the wedding, and the bride receives the gift money. Young people usually have 3 weddings, in the city where they work, in the groom's hometown, and in the bride's hometown. To a certain extent, they and their parents can receive gift money from their acquaintances, which is equivalent to recovering part of their investment. This is the reason why the cost of a Chinese wedding has remained high for a long time. With the gift money from acquaintances and all presents, face-conscious Chinese families will try to have a grand wedding. However, that was the picture in 2019, and things have changed in 2023. With the post-epidemic recession hitting the middle class and young people hard, unemployment increased and household spending was low. This has forced young people to fiddle around in the matter of marriage. It's important to fulfill their parents' wishes and have a wedding that will help recover the gift money for their parents as well as for themselves. At the same time, the wedding can't be too shabby either. As many of you have already noticed, wedding supplies can be unexpectedly expensive. A lot of things that bear the name of the wedding are, by default, significantly more expensive. For example, bridal makeup is very different from everyday makeup. Getting a wedding manicure is much more expensive than a normal one, and the price of a wedding banquet is much higher than the normal price tag. This has led young people to make a point of saving money on their weddings by doing things themselves. How do they save money? The number one thing that young people have in mind is to skip things. For example, cutting out the wedding company and going straight to the scene-setting team and the Big Four on their own, one by one. The Big Four refers to the master of ceremonies, makeup artist, photographer, and videographer. This avoids the middleman and saves the difference in price. Remove many unnecessary things from the wedding company's packages, replace the fresh flowers with artificial flowers, remove the wedding vehicle, and reuse things used by friends, which can also cut out a lot of unnecessary expenses. To save money, finding alternatives is also a good idea. For example, when looking for a photographer, one can expand the hiring range from the city to the suburbs. And instead of using a known studio, one can switch to a personal studio that used to work for the brand, thus getting similar quality at a much cheaper price. When it comes to buying wedding supplies, the keywords bride and wedding will be removed and then replaced by props and supplies, and the price will once again reach a new low. For the banquets of the 3 weddings, one should try to use the package deal, which provides similar dishes with prices decreasing immediately. In short, contemporary young people only spend what's necessary on a wedding. They won't spend anything that's not worthwhile. A young person born in 1995 described on the WeChat public page how she saved money on her own wedding. This girl is a designer working and living in Beijing. Instead of choosing a well-known lawn wedding venue, she found one with a grassy area that was least expensive. The cost of the venue plus a cold lunch came to less than 60,000 yuan, or about $8,000. The backdrop at the wedding was designed by myself, and I got someone to make it for me. The wedding company was hired to decorate the backdrops. She said, "I can't afford to pay for a dessert table that costs tens of thousands." So a few months before the wedding, she began to teach herself baking. She chose a cake that was resistant to warping and easy to shape and used biscuits with her initials on them for the dessert table. It looked good. Next, she gave up the expensive wedding dress. She ordered the dress from Taobao for only 600 yuan or $84. The seller even told her, "Take care of it when you wear it, and when you clean it, you can still put it up on the internet and resell it." The seller had also gotten married at the time, and as a token of her blessing, the seller gave the bride-to-be her own faux gold and silver jewelry that she wore to the wedding. As for the gifts after the wedding, the two young people did it all themselves. What was the result? The girl wrote, "With careful budgeting, our wedding was held as scheduled. On the night of the wedding, my husband and I were exhausted. My husband said, 'Tying the knot is no less than torture.'" China's state news agency Xinhua News Agency also recently published a report with the headline, "Young people go to the countryside for a DIY money-saving and dignified wedding." The report reads, "Nowadays, going back to the countryside to have a new wedding that is both dignified and cost-effective has become a new trend for many young people of Generation Z." They decorate the site according to their own aesthetic preferences and organize a new fashionable wedding with a full sense of ceremony in the vegetable patch in the backyard of their hometown, on the concrete patch in front of their farmhouse, or on the grassy area or by the stream at the entrance of the village. It's very different from the traditional rural weddings. They have also shared their experience in planning a wedding on social media platforms such as Xiaohongshu, driving more young people to join the new trend of having a wedding in the countryside. The report believes that while meeting the new demands of some young people, the spending upgrades in the wedding industry tends to promote the trend of making comparisons with each other in scale and extravagance, making weddings a sweet burden. It not only increases the cost of young people's marriage, but also makes parents feel overburdened. The report raises the question, how to break the old customs and bring in the new ones. It's necessary for the local government to actively advocate new ideas, such as setting up experimental zones for reforming wedding customs and guiding the public to consciously reduce the burden for love. The conclusion of the official media is that the new style of countryside weddings has further conveyed and guided the new trend, which is also of positive significance in guiding and promoting the reform of wedding customs and the formation of new guidelines for weddings. This is the propaganda skill of China's official media, always able to cleverly convert the hardships and sorrows faced by the Chinese people into poetic and beautiful positive news, not forgetting to tell readers that the wedding of the common people also needs the guidance of the communist government to lighten the load for love. Some of the young people of this generation have already done the math when it comes to cutting the burden of love. What is the most direct way to save money? It doesn't cost me more than 10 yuan a day to eat a vegetarian dish, and it doesn't cost me more than 20 yuan a day to eat a meat dish. I'm a single bachelor and I'm overnourished every day. As long as I don't fall in love, don't buy a home, don't get married, don't have children, don't spend recklessly, my life is good. I cook for myself. Today I made stir-fried meat with chili. I bought 10 yuan of meat and 2 yuan of chili, and then I cooked it myself. I don't spend 20 yuan a day. Such a life is wonderful. I don't have a mortgage or a car loan to pay. I have no wife and children to support. I am alone. When I am fed, the whole family isn't hungry. The bachelor's life is too good. Remember this wonderful life by living alone. Enjoy the meat. Haha. Enjoy meat. Yum.